Hello book lovers, and welcome back or welcome to Nakat's Bookish Cafe. Today I'm here to go through my April reading wrap up. Alright guys, if you have been part of my channel for a while, then I would like to formally announce that I do not think there will ever be a mid-month check-in ever again. So I just feel like I'm like, another month, no mid-month check-in. I just feel like, considering I've reduced the amount of videos that I'm making, that I usually have other videos that I want to make instead of that. So unless it's a really slow month or a really fast month and I am just blowing through books in the first half and I'm like, whoa, we got to do a check-in, you can probably assume that there is probably just going to be a overarching monthly wrap up. As far as how these wrap-ups work, I go through some very basic stats to let you know how my month went, and then I go ahead and review all my books from lowest rated to highest rated. So without further ado, let's go ahead and take a look at how April went for me. In the month of April, I ended up reading a total of 9 books, which isn't too shabby. It makes it the second highest reading month of the year so far. Each count wise, I was sitting at 2,075 pages. As far as audiobook hours goes, I listened to 24.10 hours worth of audiobooks, making it the highest amount of audiobooks that I have read so far this year, and that is thanks to the fact that instead of just reading 1 audiobook or 0, I read a whopping 2 audiobooks this month. As far as my average rating, an excellent average rating, sitting at 4.44 stars. So a really great month. I will say that I did only have 1 official DNF. So why do I say there's been only 1 official DNF? The reason is because this month I did a vlog for Try a Chapter, and I ended up doing that for my These Books Will Self-Destruct list, and I ended up DNFing a few of those after just the 1 chapter, but I won't be talking about them here just because I barely read them. So if you're interested in seeing which books I DNF'd from my self-destruct list, I will go ahead and link that vlog up above. Now, the book that I'm about to talk about, I did DNF in that video as well, but I did get a little bit further into it. And that is going to be The Master of One, or I'm sorry, Just Master of One. And that is by Jada Jones and Danny Bennett. This is a standalone queer fantasy story. I got a whopping 108 pages into it before I decided this was just not for me. And considering it includes a male-male romance, it's pretty hard for me to put one of these books down and just say that I'm not enjoying it. This follows a young thief called Rags, and he is caught trying to steal some treasure one day, and he is brought to the sorcerer. Is he a sorcerer? Yes. He is brought to the sorcerer of the queen, and he is told that he needs to help the sorcerer find a hidden treasure. And so he sets out to do so, and then finds out that this treasure is actually this elf. I only got to the point where he had accomplished all of the trials to get to the treasure, which is our elf, and they were about to set off on the next part of their journey. I hated the writing. It wasn't like terrible writing where I was reading it and I was like, wow, this is really bad. It was more like it was very bland, very two-dimensional. It lacked any sort of emotion, any sort of drive forward. I felt that the characters were very flat. Rags, our thief, I could tell you nothing about him other than the fact that he's a thief. And I feel like once you cross the 100-page mark and you feel like you don't know anything about the characters and feel absolutely no connection to them, then it is a little bit of a lost cause, at least for me, who is a rather character-driven person. So this book was very underwhelming. I know a lot of people find it underwhelming, and unfortunately I do have to agree with them. So I decided that I would DNF it. All right, now that we have talked about the books that I have DNF'd, let's go ahead and jump into the books that I have actually finished and rated. Good news, I did not rate any books under a 4-star this month. So that's pretty great. I ended up having 4 4-stars, and I will go ahead and talk about them in the order in which I read them. The first one is going to be Kristen Sear by TJ Klune. This is the second book to Withered and Sear. This is a duology of his. It is post-apocalyptic. I would say out of all of his books, they are definitely the darkest. We are following a character named Cavallo, and he is living in a prison with a AI robot that is slowly losing its mind, as well as his talking dog. His dog that does not actually talk because Cavallo himself is losing his mind as well. This whole story takes place about 100 years after nuclear warfare wipes out the majority of humanity, and obviously the earth is still very much scorched, and there are still a lot of areas that will cause you to become very sick if you are living there for too long. At the beginning of the series, Cavallo follows a deer that he has shot into the territory of the Dead Rabbits, which is a group of cannibals, and he stumbles across one of these rabbits, and instead of killing him, he just takes him back to the prison with him, and he finds out that there's something very, I guess you could say, special about this rabbit, and he holds a very important place amongst the rabbits, and they and their leader are very eager to get him back, and they will kill and hurt anyone they have to do so. And Cavallo, unfortunately for him, has decided that he's very attached to this mute rabbit that he has captured, and decides that it is his job to go ahead and keep him as well as his little family at the prison safe from this group of crazy cannibals that are kind of a cult. So I really enjoy TJ Klune's writing in this story. I think that the way that TJ Klune writes has a bit of a repetitive nature to it sometimes, and I think that that works very well when you are dealing with someone who is actively losing their mind, if not that he already has. I think that Cavallo was a very well written character. I thought that the story was very interesting plot wise. It definitely kept me entertained. I feel like Cavallo is a very gray character, leaning slightly towards black. He's not really a good guy, okay? He doesn't want to be the savior. He is just as prone to violence as the ones that he is fighting in this book. He has caused a lot of pain and suffering in his life, and he struggles with that, definitely, but at the same time, that doesn't mean he's gonna like show mercy or anything like that. So I thought he was a very interesting character. I enjoyed all of the side characters. I enjoy the romance. I feel is like a strong word for this. There is definitely a relationship forming between Cavallo and this rabbit, but both of them are so irreversibly damaged that you would not really consider this romantic, and if you did, it would be in a very twisted and dark way. So I always say that if you like a knife to the throat scene, this series will give you that like multiple times. In fact, every time that they are like sleeping in the same bed, the rabbit like always like holds a knife to Cavallo's stomach, because that's how bad his trust issues are, and Cavallo's just like, yeah, I feel comfortable. This is how I want to sleep. So, you know, it's definitely not the healthiest relationship, but it is a relationship that is helping these two survive a very traumatic event. So I had a good time with it. I will say, I know I said I really enjoyed the plot, but I do think that there were a few moments that were just a little bit too slow, so that's why it only got a 4-star. But overall, I would say that if you are someone who enjoys post-apocalyptic books, if you are someone who enjoys slightly darker romances, then I would definitely go ahead and check out this book. The next book I'm going to be talking about is going to be Lore by Lily Mayne. This is the 7th book in the Monstrous series. It is the last book that is currently out, and this one is a little bit different than the other books in the series, and I unfortunately didn't like it as much. I still gave it a 4 stars because I love anything that Lily Mayne puts out, but I do think I was left a little bit disappointed by this one. Usually this story is following people in a post-apocalyptic world, and we are following either raiders or ex-soldiers as they are living out in the wastelands that are often crawling with these monsters that came through this rift about 20 years ago, and those soldiers and raiders are falling in love with some of those monsters. Now, this book, in a way, could almost be considered a prequel to everything else that has happened, because in this book we are following Lore, and he actually lives on the other side of the rift where a lot of the monsters had come from, and he is what is called a Morrick, which is almost like a king. He has a little fiefdom that he rules over, and he isn't very good at his job. He is someone who lost his mother and took on this role very young, and he is someone who very much lets the council lead while he just kind of wallows in self-pity, I would almost say. And one day his twin brother Leary finds this little speck in a guest room, and this little speck is sucking things into it. Like if you put like a flower stem, it'll suck the flower stem away and you won't see it. And they're like, what is this? And it grows and grows and grows until one day a human falls through it. So this story kind of talks about the original rift, because there are multiple rifts all around the world, and this is one of the small ones. And our other character, Jug, ends up falling through it. Now this takes place in the 1980s, I believe. I want to say this takes place about 30 years before any of the other books in this series, so that's why I say it's kind of a prequel. No one knows about the monster realm. Okay, the war between monsters and humans has not happened yet, and Lore is very fascinated with Jug, and Jug, despite the fact that he's very alarmed about the fact that he just fell through a hole into a monster realm, is very interested in Lore as well, and so we follow their relationship. Now, something very tragic happens in the story. I remember when I chose this book for my April TBR, I was using an emotion dice and I chose it for happy, and someone was like, good luck. And I was like, what? So yeah, there was definitely a lot of emotion in this book. I'm not going to tell you anything about that, but it definitely did make me tear up a little bit, because I was like really feeling for Lore and everything that he was going through. He loses a lot throughout the story. Now, while there were aspects of the story that I really enjoyed Lore and Jug's relationship. It took me a little longer to fall in love with them than it did with some of the other characters in the story, but they did grow on me, especially Jug's. He is such a golden retriever character that it is practically impossible not to love him. Plus, he has a mullet. Like when they first kind of described him, I was like, this man's got a mullet. And then I was like, well, it's the 80s, so yeah, he does. But there was also a ton of pacing issues with this book, in my opinion. This is the longest book in the series. It is definitely more fantasy than sci-fi based, because we are in this other world where we are following what is essentially a king in his kingdom. And I just think that the pacing suffered in this story. There was a lot of walking around, a lot of wallowing, a lot of woe is me going on, and I really did struggle with that. This was one of those books where it could have easily been cut by like at least 100 pages. There was a lot of exciting stuff that happened in here. There was just a lot of not exciting stuff that happened in between those. So I did struggle with this a little bit. I do see why this book could be or is important to what is potentially going to happen moving forward in the series. I know the next book is Leary, following our character's twin brother, and then I was looking up kind of like, hey, is there any hint of when Leary's coming out? And I did see that the author mentioned that Leary is not the last book, so there will be at least 2 more books, and I am very excited for those. And I can see how learning about the monster world and their response to the rift and everything is important to the series. I just think some of Laura's behavior was a little bit annoying, but I'm one of those people where I feel like if you are in a position of power, which he is, then sometimes you just have to make certain sacrifices. Like, I know you want to hang out with your boyfriend, but remember that group that you were talking about that's being unfairly oppressed? Why don't you focus on making things better for them instead of just hanging out in your bedchamber with your boyfriend all the time? So that's why I struggle a little bit with romantasy, and this leaned a little bit more towards romantasy than I would usually like. But like I said, there was still great things that happened in the story. Still love the characters for the most part, enjoyed the relationships, smut was good. So still a solid 4 stars, though I will say that it is probably my least favorite in the series. The next 4-star is one of my audiobooks, and that is A Dangerous Collaboration by Diana Raybourn. This was the 4th Veronica Speedwell series, I believe it was, and I have been on a Veronica Speedwell kick. In fact, the other audiobook that I'll be talking about is also Veronica Speedwell, and the audiobook I'm listening to right now is also Veronica Speedwell. I don't know what it is. My brain has latched on to this series. I have always really enjoyed it, and right now it's just like my current obsession, I guess. So the Veronica Speedwell series follows Veronica Speedwell as well as her professional, slightly romantic partner, Stoker. And essentially at the beginning of this series, she is about to set off on a new adventure because her aunt has passed away. So she is now kind of a single and free woman. However, she's approached by a man who is like, someone is trying to kill you or kidnap you, so I need you to come with me to London. And her thought is like, I'm heading to London anyway, so I might as well go with him. And then this man drops her off at Stoker's house and is like, hey, you know, if you could keep her safe for a little while, I got some things to do. And then a guy goes and dies, and she's like, did you kill him? And Stoker's like, no, I think you killed him. And she was like, no, because I was here with you. And he's like, I was here with you too. And so they go off together, and that is the first murder that they solve together. And in every book, they stumble across a new murder. There's something about these guys that just attract murder left and right, and they are constantly solving them. On top of that, there's a ton of banter between the two of them. Their relationship is growing stronger and stronger. They are meeting new people, building new relationships. I just love these stories so much. They're so addictive in my opinion. I love the audiobooks because I really enjoy the accents that the narrator does. So I highly suggest checking out the audiobooks if you decide to check out this series. For me, they are just really a fun time, and that's really something that I feel like I need right now. I just need like a book that's doesn't take itself too seriously. So I have just been binge reading them. In this one, they travel to a friend of Stoker's house whose bride had run away what was it, like 3 years ago on their wedding, and he suspects that she might have been murdered on the day of their wedding and had in fact not run away. And so they start to investigate that, and things get pretty complicated. There's a lot of drama going on here, you know, as far as this woman's relationship with her fiance as well as with another man. So I was enjoying the juicy drama of it all. Did I find it slightly annoying that a lot of people, specifically a woman, was talking about how manipulative she was, how she was betrayed by her, how cruelly she was treated by her, and at the same time we just have men drooling over this woman? Yes. I did find that a little bit annoying, because I'm like, men, if you could just think with your heads instead of other parts of your body, that would be great. But at the same time, there was a part of me that understood her, because she was from a lower class and she kind of did what she had to do to get her money. So, you know, gotta respect a working woman. So I had a good time with this one, and I'll talk a little bit more about the other one that I read a little later in the video. The final 4-star of this month is a graphic novel, and that is Flamer. This is written by Mike Curato. I went ahead and picked this one up because I was watching some videos about people's favorite banned books, and this was on the list. This book is highly inspired by the author's own experience. I don't know if it's specifically with the Boy Scouts, but it's like kind of like the Boy Scouts, where you go to camp and you learn to tie rope or whatever. And we are following a young guy who is going to this camp. It is the summer before he goes to high school. He is very scared to go to high school because he spent a lot of his middle school years getting bullied, and he's like, will things be worse? Will they be better in high school? I'm not really sure. He is someone who does not see himself as a queer man, but he acts very queer. He's like, this is just the way that I am, and people are constantly judging me for that. And it's very difficult for him, because he's like, when I try to act normal, you still make fun of me, and I just don't know how to be. And we just follow him at this camp as he's trying to be friends with people, as he's trying to like figure himself out a little bit, as he's struggling with these feelings that he has, these emotions that he has towards this boy that he's friends with. He has some body image issues. He faces some homophobia as well as racism, because he is, I believe, Filipino, or at least half Filipino. And I just think there was a lot of great commentary in this story. I definitely can see why it would be banned, because it shows the real experience of someone who is queer presenting, and it's not a good experience. It kind of shows how harmful homophobia is. I believe that this book is set during a time where the AIDS pandemic was still going on, so there is still a lot of fear around homosexuality, because it's very much connected to that disease, and so that makes the homophobia even worse than it is nowadays. Well, nowadays we're going downhill for sure, but I really appreciated this story. I think that it would be very important for young people to read this. Why did I not give it 5 stars? A couple petty reasons. One, the art style wasn't really my thing. I am a visual person, so it does matter to me if I like the art or not, and it wasn't my favorite. There was definitely a few impactful art scenes, but otherwise it was a little bit underwhelming. Also, and this is gonna seem completely unfair, but also a reading about teenage boys. Oh my gosh. Sometimes I really do hate it. They just do the weirdest things. They say the worst things ever. And I'm like, I'm so glad I'm not a guy. So there was a couple of things in here where I was just like, but you know, teenage guys, that's just the way that they are. And that is okay. You do you, I guess. But yes, no, I'm definitely glad that I went ahead and checked this out, and I do think it is a worthwhile read. All right, moving on to the 4.5s. I only had 2 of those this month. One of them is a book that was not originally on my TBR, and that is The Apples of New Eden by Mars Adler. So I take part in this TBR battle that is between Kim from Expedition Through Pages and her mom, as well as Amy from A-Star Reads and her mom, and there are specific prompts for that. And I went ahead and added this book on so that I could fulfill that prompt. Specifically, it was one of the highest rated books on my Goodreads list. So this is a relatively short story. I believe it was under 300 pages, and it is a short sci-fi horror erotica. Some of those labels I don't 100% agree with. I do see aspects of it in this story, but I would not consider it full-blown horror. There were definitely some aspects of the story, especially towards the beginning, that gave me the EBGBs a little, so I can see why it would be shelved as horror. And also erotica. There was definitely some erotic scenes, but nothing like full-blown erotica. So I'm trying to wonder if I made up the erotic part. Romance for sure, there is some smut, but I wouldn't say full-blown erotica or anything like that. Now, this is one of those books where we say we listen and we don't judge. Okay, so just keep that in mind as I'm talking about what this book is about. So in this book, we are following Ripley, and Ripley is a trans character, and he lives on New Eden, which is this colony that's job is to produce food for the Commonwealth. The Commonwealth is the, I guess you could say, the empire of the universe that is constantly expanding, taking over other planets, and is constantly at war with this group of rebellions. They are not the good guys, but you know, our people, they're just poor, living on this little planet that is not really habitable for humans. They just live in these little glass domes and these caves, and they're just doing their best to survive. And Ripley is the mechanic, and he makes sure that the robots that they're using and everything like that is up and running. And this book actually takes place around Christmas. He has an older brother who is fighting for the Commonwealth because every family has to give at least one child to be a soldier, and his mother decided to send his older brother and train him, Ripley, to be the mechanic of the family. Ripley is very fond of his brother. Yeah, I don't so this is a incest romance because it is a romance between half brothers. They're not full brothers, but they are half brothers from the same mother, from the same womb. Yeah. So essentially, Ripley is told that his brother cannot come home for Christmas, and Ripley is obviously very upset about this, and then things get a little out of hand. I'm not going to really say anything more than that, but like I said, this is a romance between those two brothers, so there are sexual acts being performed between the two brothers. If you are not into that, which I thought I wouldn't be, but honestly, like I said, we listen, we don't judge. It was pretty hot. Okay, I'm gonna be honest, this author knows how to write a very sensual scene. And I was just like, I'm just gonna pretend that they're not brothers. And then it was very hard because they kept mentioning that they were brothers during the scenes. And I was like, can you stop that? But still, I really had a great time with this story. This is one of those shorter stories where I felt fully satisfied with what the author gave me. Oftentimes with shorter stories, I'm like, I want more of this, I want more of that. And while I would be fully happy to read more in this universe, either from different perspectives or even following these characters or following from the point of view of side characters that we were introduced to, I am at the same time fully satisfied with this little snippet of an event that the author gave me. So I was pleasantly surprised. This is not a book that I've heard a lot of people talking about. I think I was introduced to it by one person that I follow on Instagram, and they're the only person who's ever mentioned it. And so I went into it really not knowing what to expect. I think this is the first full-length novel by this author. I would definitely be happy to check out some of their short stories and any future work that they put out. So if you're looking for a short sci-fi book, one that has some horror aspects of it, maybe a little taboo romance going on, a little bit of rebellion happening, I really do suggest this. I think the writing and the pacing of the story was 10 out of 10. The other 4.5 stars is going to be the other Veronica Speedwell book, which is called A Dangerous Relation. And this one, I had so much fun. This one has Jack the Ripper kind of playing around in the background. This one doesn't focus too much on a murder, though there is a murder happening. More we are following Veronica as she is kind of tasked to protect a certain family member, because there's a big aspect of the story where she has a family that she did not originally know about, and she gets the opportunity to meet this half brother of hers. And I really enjoyed watching the two of them together and just seeing how they interacted. I really enjoyed her half brother. I'm sure that we probably won't see him that often in the future, just because she needs to keep a distance from this family for social reasons, but I still really enjoyed the time that we had together. I thought that the mystery murder aspect of it was exciting. We had a little bit of a kidnapping situation going on. This was also one of those books where Veronica and Stoker's relationship was really building to a climax, and we saw kind of them for the first time being like, okay, let's see about taking the next step in this relationship. So this book just had a lot of good stuff going on in it, so I went ahead and gave it a solid 4.5 stars. All right, and getting into the final 3 books of this video, we have the 3 5-stars that I had. Now I'm going to talk about 2 of them together because they are part of the same series, and that is going to be the Tea Dragon Society. So the original Tea Dragon, this one, was my challenge book for the month of April, I believe, and I somehow ended up putting in a request for this book at the library. So I picked it up, said, hey, wait a minute, I think this is the wrong book, put in a request for this and read it, gave it 5 stars, and decided since I had this one anyway, then I might as well read it, and also gave it 5 stars. So if you're not familiar with this series, they are a group of companion novels. I don't think you have to read them in any specific order. I just am, because that's the kind of girl that I am. And we are following people who are living in a world where there are these little tea dragons, and essentially they are these little tiny dudes, you can see them there in the middle, that grow tea leaves or tea flowers on their little dragon horns. And the process of raising tea dragons is kind of dying because it's a difficult task. They are high maintenance little creatures. And we are following characters that are taking part in caring for tea dragons. Primarily, that is what we focus on here in the first book. In the second book, we focus a little bit more on this dragon who was supposed to be protecting and taking part in like ceremonies of this village, and he falls asleep for 80 years. And we kind of follow as he tries to make up for time lost at this village. So yeah, so both of them are just really cute, heartwarming stories. There's a ton of diversity in them. I love all of the characters. I love all the little tea dragons, and I really enjoyed the art and the messaging in these stories, so I just had to go ahead and give them 5 stars. I know everyone is talking about how wonderful these are, and they are worth the hype. So if you've been thinking about grabbing these, I highly suggest giving them a shot. All right, guys, and the final 5-star and the most impactful read of the month is going to be Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. Now, I will say it has been years since I read The Hunger Games. So a lot of people were talking about how in Catching Fire, we get glimpses of Haymitch's past. I don't remember any of that at all. I also never read Ballad of the Songbird, I think is what it was called. I'm personally not interested in that story. I did watch the movie, but I'm never going to read the book just because I don't need more of Snow. You know, I don't need more of him. But this is Haymitch's story. It is when he is brought into the Hunger Games for the 50th anniversary. So this is one of those, what do they call them? Quarter quells. So instead of 2 people from each district being drawn into the Hunger Games, 4 people are being pulled, 2 girls and 2 boys. So twice as many children are being killed. Now, as we know, Haymitch is the mentor to Katniss and Peeta in the Hunger Games. So he's alive. And so we know that he is the winner of these games. Some of the things I'm going to be talking about in my review could be slightly spoilery to the actual Hunger Games series. So if you have like literally never heard of the Hunger Games or read them, just a heads up for that. I'm going to be as vague as possible, but you know, it's kind of hard to talk about it without mentioning things from the original series. This book was very difficult to read. In fact, I have been in a little bit of a reading slump ever since I picked this up. The difficult thing about this book to me is that we are following this boy who is very different from the man that we know. And so we're like, yeah, we're about to watch him be traumatized to the point that he becomes an alcoholic. So we know bad things are going to happen in this story. We see kind of these people making these plans for rebellion, for stopping the games. And you're like, it's not going to work, because we know that in 24 years from now, when Katniss is pulled or volunteers to join the Hunger Games are still going. The Capitol is still in power. We know that everything that they're doing in this book doesn't work. And it is very difficult to read about people struggling and making sacrifices to bring about change and knowing that they fail. But at the same time, this book is saying rebellion doesn't happen overnight. A rebellion does not just build itself within the course of a few weeks and win over the oppressive power. This is something that takes years of dedication, years of sacrifice. Everything that these people did in this book, even if they failed, led to the success that we saw in the Hunger Games book. It is showing that even if you know you will never live to see the change that you're fighting for, you should still fight for it. And I think that that is such a powerful message. They always say Suzanne Collins only puts out a book when she's got something to say, and girl was hollering, okay? Because we are definitely in a time where we have to fight against the powers that are in control right now, and it seems a little bit hopeless, that's for sure, and change is definitely not going to happen overnight, but it is a process that we need to start, and we cannot just give up and let them walk all over us. So this book I think is so powerful, especially reading it in the here and now. It was so well written. I loved all of the characters, which sucks because most of them die. It was very painful to read. It was very well written, very exciting, very gruesome, very dark. So I have a lot of respect for this author. I'm very glad that I decided to pick this book up. I was avoiding spoilers left and right, even though it's a prequel, so sometimes it's kind of hard to like spoil a prequel, but still, I had a very hard time reading this, but I also genuinely enjoyed it and would highly recommend checking it out. So well written, so important. 100% a 5-star read. All right, guys, so these are all the books that I've read. I'm kind of looking at the image that you are seeing me in the middle of right now. As you can see, there's a few books that I did not complete. I will say I'm currently reading Chain Gang All Stars. I'm probably going to be putting it down for a little bit since as of today, Squash That series is starting, and then I have some other vlog things that I need to do, but I'll continue chugging my way through it. One of the reasons that I'm struggling with that book is, like I said, I just finished Sunrise on the Reaping, and Chain Gang All Stars is about people killing other people for entertainment. So it's a little too similar, and so I've just been struggling to read it, though I do think it is a very well written book. I will definitely be continuing it. It'll just be a little slow. As you could see, If Cats Disappeared from the World shows as DNF, but I DNF'd that at the end of March, so that's why I didn't mention it in this video. There's also a couple books like Pretty and Convergence that I actually ended up reading at the end of March as well. I did not get to A Lesson Before Dying. Sunbringer, I technically read like 13 pages of, but I just did not have time to do that. Same with The Saint of Heartbreak. So while there was a lot of books that I just didn't get to, I did get to quite a few of them and had a really great time with them, as well as reading a couple additional books that weren't on my original TBR. All right, guys, so as you can tell, Sunrise on the Reaping was my favorite book. I don't think I can really choose a least favorite book this month, just because I gave nothing under 4 stars, so it just doesn't feel right. Unless, of course, I mention my DNF, which definitely was the worst written book out of all the ones that I read. But I would love to know what your favorite and least favorite book of the month was. As always, guys, thank you so much for supporting my channel by watching my videos, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!